Welcome to Leaders in the Arena. My name is Jenny Whitener, and I'm thrilled to be spending some time with you today on this special episode of our podcast series on power moves. We are Bridge Innovate. We are dedicated to empowering teams to think, lead, and problem solve differently for sustainable results. We have a full portfolio of solutions that we offer to our clients, but today we're just sharing perspective around some of the work that was recently done by Adam Grant on his published work called Power Moves. It's an audiobook, and it was developed basically on his insights that he gathered from Davos, one of the sort of leading think tanks of the World Economic Forum that's held every year in Davos, Switzerland. And in attending that program, it occurred to Adam, famous writer with many books out, Hidden Potential, Originals, Think Again, that this was a place that he could observe and develop insights around the dynamics of power, of leadership and influence across a number of different leaders from representing cultures, different countries, and in different walks of life. And he put all those insights together in this wonderful audiobook called Power Moves. Many of you may know Adam Grant. He's one of my favorites, actually. He's one of Wharton's top-rated professors for 7 straight years. He's an organizational psychologist. And he talks and speaks and writes often about motivation, about rethinking assumptions around creativity, and the things that really influence leaders to be their very best. Adam's known to be one of the top, most recognized influential leaders in business thinking. And if you don't follow him, I would suggest it. He goes on in his audiobook to talk about power is a force for good. Grant argues that power is increasingly seen as a force for good, and that the use of power is changing from something to be coveted to something that needs to be shared. And when you stop and think about this observation that Grant had around power and a force for good, all leaders in all roles by default carry power in their organizational position. How they intentionally use or display that power, and if they're using it as a force for good, is something that I think leaders have to intentionally challenge themselves to do every day. Some of it comes innately from your own philosophy as leader, but some of it is that our pressures that we face every day may tilt us or may have us appear differently than what would be our aspiration. So I think his point is good here, that if we set this goal, that whatever power that's been given to you and the role that you have as a leader, that you use that as a force for good. The other thing that he talks about, that Adam talks about in his book, Power Moves, is that this evolving nature of power. And he was talking about, especially post-COVID, what he's observed with the way leaders are leading today, that power is not about dominance. It's about influence and the ability to create positive change. I've seen so many CEOs today who are really working in their organizations to not only create shareholder value, but to create sustainable societal impact. So you're seeing executives use this power of influence to create positive change, not only for their businesses to create dramatic revenue growth for shareholders, but then also for what can they do for their communities that they serve, the social impact or the sustainability impact that they have on the world. You see this sort of modern power dynamics prioritizing empathy, collaboration, and ethical leadership, something that in the environment that we face today, there's so much discourse, there's so much conflict, there's so much volatility, that how do we really encourage leaders today to use this essence of power to focus on collaboration, to understand that leading requires a depth of empathy of those that you're leading, and to constantly be demonstrating ethics and ethical leadership as you go. He talks about how effective leaders combine power with humility. And he talks about the key traits of this humility for leaders is active listening. You probably remember that old joke about that we have two ears and one mouth. We should use them in that order, right? So are we really actively listening when we're engaged with individuals? Do we understand their perspective? Are we able to walk in their shoes and have this concept of empathy come to life in our perspective and engaging with others? Are we sharing credit? Are we recognizing others? Are we really amplifying the contributions that they're making to our organizations? And are we fostering a supportive environment? These are the traits that Adam Grant talks about in his observation of leaders who really use power in a very positive way. He calls on leaders to be humble, to use humility to increase trust and respect and long-term influence. And, the interesting part for me in working with leaders for well over 25 years in a variety of roles is that I'll see so many leaders come to the table with a goal or an aspiration to be this effective leader using power in a positive way, and coming forward as a humble leader, but they let many times stress get in the way of that, and not being intentional every day at every moment about how they're leading. And I just think sometimes we have to pause, right? Gives ourselves a breath as a leader. Remember a story in working with a very large technology company. The CEO was trying to lead a major shift with a company that had a 50-year history in a product industry, and to transform them into a technology company. And a part of doing that, he launched a leadership development program that we were a part of, their top 150, coming into kind of an exec ed center in groups of like 30 to really launch this transformation and this new way of thinking to be an innovation company, a technology innovation company, not a product company. And in doing that, he put all this planning into place, this whole executive retreat. And at the opening of his comments to the group, he shared a little bit about his vision on innovation. And at the end of that, he asked for any questions from the group. And one gentleman raised his hand and he said, "I'm just so thrilled to hear about what our company is doing in innovation. And this is so exciting." And instead of just affirming that, the CEO flipped. And in that moment, he lost his perspective. And he confronted this gentleman in front of his peers by saying, "You didn't know that we were doing all this in innovation? Have you not been reading my emails? Is this the first time you've heard of this?" And so he let the stress of the moment affect the entire launch of this leadership session. And so I know the CEO. I had worked with him in preparing for this leadership transformation. And in that moment, he missed the opportunity to affirm this gentleman's recognition and instead took it as an affront. So again, leading with humility takes intentionality. And we have to work on it every day, no matter the stresses that we face as leaders. The other important part that Adam Grant talks about in his book is sort of this concept of collaboration as a new power currency. And you think about that for a minute when you think about power, right? The organizational power at the C-level or the executive level, but then also now think about how power structures are emerging around collaboratives, around what your connections are, who your partners are in terms of your business model. And the shift from competition to collaboration is vital in sort of our interconnected world. Do we have partners around the world that we can go to market together? We can share in the supply chain. We can share in sort of market intelligence. Collaborative leadership is evolving in innovation. You see so many companies teaming up around innovating the next new project or new product offering and problem solving together, especially around some of the recent disruptions in the supply chain. He talks about this collaboration in terms of building partnerships and creating win-win scenarios that amplify influence. It's that concept we're better together, we're stronger together, and we're able to have more fortitude in managing disruption and being ready to thrive in a volatile marketplace, we have this power of collaborative currency. He goes on and talks about, in his book, Power Moves, the changing landscape of power. And this is something that we see a lot in our strategic foresight work here at Bridge, where we are asking people to look at future trends, explore these future trends, and then look at the implications on their businesses and what may need to influence their strategies, what things they may need to act now, or things that they may need to keep like a vigilant watch on. But this changing landscape of power is happening now in our digital age, where information and technology and AI and networks are becoming a critical source of influence. Even generationally, younger generations are redefining power through activism and social media and influencers. So you think about new power currencies, not just financial currencies, but expertise currencies, social network currencies. You look at trust as a currency. If you even think about, your different Uber sites or certain applications like TripAdvisor, where people are looking at ratings and getting, the community, the user, to really vote in and give ratings and votes on things. And that's creating a currency of value and of capability in the marketplace. So many different types of currencies now coming into play that begin to influence power for organizations. One of the other things that Adam calls out in his book is this concept of using power with purpose and the importance of the ethical imperative. He challenges us as leaders to remember that power carries a moral responsibility to act for social good and to act for greater good, that leaders should align their actions and their values and consider the broader impact for organizations. We know this as leaders. Most of us, carry that ethical integrity responsibility with us every day when we're given that ultimate responsibility to lead, and that's such a gift. But we have to make sure that our actions and our values line up and that we're constantly walking the talk. And this ethical use of power will build sustainable influence and trust in your organization. I remember working with a large financial services company, and they were so excited in their engagement survey when they got back that only 25%, they said, distrusted senior leaders. And I'm like, how could you find that acceptable, that 1 in 4 people distrust the senior leaders? They thought that was a great score. I said, would you want your customers to feel the same way? I think that we have to understand that trust is a critical component in leading a high-performing organization today. And we have to use our power as leaders to build, to lead ethically, to lead with good social and moral responsibility, to build that trust, to walk the talk, to model the behavior that we want to see in our organization. So many entities have failed to do that and to set that cultural standard in their organization, and it comes back to bite them. Look at some of the tragedies that happened in Volkswagen just in the past years. So one of the tactics that we use when we're trying to build this concept of understanding power is an activity that we do in some of our leadership programs called Powerful, Powerless. And this is something that we'll send out after the program as a takeaway, but it's an activity where you would have a group discussion with your team and you ask them 3 questions. And in these questions, you're going to ask them to make first some personal notes to reflect on these 3 questions, and then open it up for discussion. So here is an example of some of the 3 questions that I would use in this activity to explore powerful and powerless. The first one is to share a time when you felt powerful because of the actions or words of a leader in your life. So if you're wanting to really empathetically understand from your team how to empower them or how to understand how power affects them, use this simple activity. First question, share a time when you felt powerful because of actions or words of a leader in your life. This gives you an opportunity to think for a moment and to really remember a situation where you felt powerful and what did that leader do? And by giving people a chance to reflect on that and then share, you begin to open up perspective about what leaders can do to help others feel powerful. Second question, share about a time when you felt powerless because of actions or words of a leader in your life. Same thing, it gives people a chance to reflect on a memory they have, an experience they had where they felt powerless, and then discuss what those leadership behaviors were that affected that. And that's something we want to avoid, right? Or something we want to mitigate. And the last question in this exercise is, as a leader, what behaviors would you do more of to enable others to act and feel powerful? And you'll be so surprised in this activity where you give these simple questions to your team to reflect on and then discuss the outcome. You'll grow as a leader, they will grow as leaders, and begin to focus on the behaviors that they want to amplify to really create an empowered team structure. So as we think about wrapping up of some of the lessons that we learned from Adam Grant's book, Power Moves, he talks about the path to ethical influence, and he challenges us as leaders to do that, to reflect on how you can apply these lessons in your personal and professional life. Focus on building ethical influence, practicing humility, and fostering collaboration. And remember, power is most effective when it's used responsibly for positive change and growth. We go through a lot of this type of analysis in our 5 Practices of Exemplary Leadership program. It's based on the book, The Leadership Challenge by James Kouzes and Barry Posner. And the book identifies these top 5 exemplary practices of leadership that in their research, when they looked at the highest performing leaders across sectors, what were the top behaviors that these leaders were doing that really made them exemplary? And they came up with 5 components. 1 was model the way. 2 was inspire a shared vision. Number 3 was challenge the process. Number 4 was enable others to act. And number 5 was encourage the heart. And we go into these in depth in our leadership program, the 5 Practices of Exemplary Leadership. But today is just a part of our discussion on power moves and building on the good guidance that we get from Adam Grant and his book. I wanted to share with you a little bit about the behaviors that Kouzes and Posner pulls out and model the way. This is the authentic, the ethical leadership that Adam Grant is calling us to really step forward and live every day as leaders. And here are some of the example behaviors. 1, I set a personal example of what I expect from others. So I'm walking the talk, right? I make certain that people adhere to the principles and standards that we have agreed upon. So we get consistency and transparency across the standards of behaviors that we set. I follow through on the promises and commitments I make. I ask for feedback on how my actions affect other people's performance. So that's the bit of humility, right? I build consensus around a common set of values for running our organization. Again, empathetic, collaborative leadership, building that consensus around a common set of values that hold us. And the last behavior, I'm clear about my philosophy of leadership. Being able to share with others transparently what your values are, what your beliefs are in leadership, the things that you hold true, so they know where you're coming from, and using that as a way to establish trust and understanding, and then transferring that back in a question and asking others what they expect from you and learning about their values and modeling that sort of ethical, value-based, trust-based leadership. So a couple of the key takeaways on those behaviors that are called out for exemplary leaders. So thanks for joining us today on an exploration of Power Moves by Adam Grant and hearing some of our experience and also working with leaders around the world about the importance of really intentionally leading and understanding that power comes with that role and using it as a force for good. It takes all your effort every day to be the leader that you can be. So best wishes to you on that journey, and certainly reach out to us at Bridge Innovate if we can help in any way. What's coming up next for us and Leaders in the Arena on our podcast series is an upcoming conversation, November 20th, on the book Deliberate Calm, being led by our executive in residence, Carlene Blanding. This is a discussion that you don't want to miss. It'll cover some great tips of something we all need in our volatile world today, how to approach it in a calm way in this area of volatility. Carlene brings a wealth of experience in having led during COVID, a major military hospital, and her job as a colonel, and then now in the private sector as vice president of human resources at Shaw Industries. So I know that you'll want to hear that. Do check us out at Bridge Innovate or Leaders in the Arena podcast series at any place that you go to get podcasts. And we thank you for joining today. Again, my name's Jenny Whitener at Bridge Innovate, and thanks so much for joining.